That's how it's gonna be, a little test tube.
It's most likely to be a highly infectious virus.
Guy steps out of Times Square station, smashes it on the sidewalk.
Welcome to Zero Net Review, a show dedicated to handcrafted studies of genre fiction. I'm author DC McNeil, and I'm joined by Patrick Laverne, a submarine officer who'd rather spend his last day fishing.
Hey, you know, there's some good salmon out here. You boys don't know what you're missing.
Some really irradiated salmon.
Yep.
And as always, J.M. Anderson, the final American on the planet, apparently.
Oh, what pressure. I've got a lot to make up for.
Yeah, that's
Well,
probably, yeah.
You can run for
literally
any office.
just like in the book.
Yeah. I like where he's like, I'm going to run for president. It's like, shut up, Dwight. Anyway, this reading, I really turned on Dwight in this reading. I have to be honest with you guys. We'll get into it, but man, this guy's like a charisma void. Anyway, welcome back to our continued study of the post-apocalypse genre, brought to you by the Zero Indent Patreon subscribers who I make the shows and articles that shape Zero Indent. Today we are continuing our discussion of 1957's novel On the Beach, reading chapters 5 through 7. So getting right up to the penultimate moments of this book. Yeah, we're kind of in the real sort of source of what the story is doing now that we've got through the intro. I'm curious, very quickly round the horn. Yeah, where are we at with this one? Patrick, kick us off. What's your vibe at this stage?
Okay, I feel like I sense where this is going, what it's doing. It's the last days of these people kind of vibe. You know, what's really important in life? What do you want to spend final days doing? You know, like going through grief and acceptance, and you know, or like, yeah, there's like a lot of like, there's a lot of examples of different people at different stages of grief and acceptance, and yeah, it's just like a real. It's not that I've seen this movie, but from what I understand about its plot, it's sort of similar to Melancholia.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just a bunch of people who know they're going to die, you know, figuring out what they want to do and what's important to them. And yeah, it's that kind of vibe. And I dig it. And I mean, I don't know for sure that's going to end very grimly, but I very much suspect it is.
I feel like the second they go, oh yeah, that theorem is wrong, it's basically, they're cooked. You know what I mean?
Mm. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, the more than halfway into the book now, and it's been building up to like, oh, there's this mysterious signal coming from San Francisco, and then what does it turn out to be? Just, you know, some like a bottle clinking on some dashboard or something like that. So, you know, I understand what the story's doing.
That was so banal and devastating. And I love the way that they build up to it, where everyone is like beforehand, they're like, it's going to be nothing. It's going to be like, they have to keep telling themselves it's going to be nothing. Because the second they have any ounce of hope, oh, brutal.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Jam, where are you at?
The last chapter ended on the Grand Prix, and that was probably like the closest I've felt to this story making sense for what I would expect from like the real world. Because like the first chapter that in this section starts off with like trying to tell the wife about how she's going to have to give the shot to her daughter, and the wife is like, what, you think we're gonna get sick? And like I know that's, I mean, some people would just refuse to acknowledge that this stuff is coming, but too much of the story just seems like, for me, maybe I'm too practical, I don't know, like it doesn't seem like everyone in this story is living the way that people would really be living until you get to the Grand Prix. And then I'm like, okay, this hits. This makes sense. This is people acting like they would because they're racing like they're going to die because they're all going to die. Like, I loved that last chapter of the racing. That's like the realist that this story has felt to me. And then all of the stuff in the sub and everything and finding the signal, like that played out like kind of like I expected it to. So it didn't really hit that hard, except for the one sailor jumping ship, which was a really cool moment, and I totally would have done that same thing. So that was also like very realistic.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, part of what the I think part of what the book is, and like part of what the story is these characters figuring out how to how do you emotionally accept this fact, and what does your behavior do or not do as you do the work to emotionally accept this fact, right? Like, the reason why people are behaving inconsistently and like unrealistically is because they're behaving inconsistency and unrealistically, not because it's written poorly. Like, that's what the book is. And I think yes, it is just that you are very practical. But I think that Shute is thinking through like the ecology of this moment of like you get Moira multiple times, you know, throughout this particular reading, like refuse a drink, because she has sort of almost come back around to pretending that the world isn't going to end. Like, now that there is less time left, people are starting to behave like things are normal again. I don't know. There's a lot going on in terms of like the ecology of society and the way people are reacting to this. Where when there was a lot of time left, they are drinking all the time, they're partying all the time. No one's really doing anything. And then when there's a little bit of time left, they're almost trying to behave normally, such that they have like some normal time left. But then on top of that, you have the Grand Prix, which is like a thing that happens every year in Melbourne, but is kind of like, as you say, Jam, like kind of perverted into this almost like death race style, like, they race in the rain, which, famously the Melbourne GP, when it rains, is like super dangerous. Like we saw that last year at the Melbourne GP. And yeah, I don't know. Shute is doing this really fantastic job of blending the completely fantastical, like people completely overreacting to things or underreacting to things, and then this complete rational, like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Like that is what you would do. And I think the contrast of those two things is what the book is. And that feeling of discomfort is the book. Like it is trying to make you go, why? Like what? Why did they do that? I don't know. Like, does that make sense? I'm kind of agreeing with you, but I'm kind of doing the normal me thing of being like, that's the point.
I've said it consistently that I also keep coming back to the era in which the book was written, influencing so much of how I'm interpreting it. So I don't know how much that influences what we're discussing. But like the stuff with the crib and just like the dad getting the crib for his kid, like the way that it's discussed is so alien to how modern fathers think. So like just that one fact being so alien, I'm like, okay, now I'm reinterpreting the entire rest of this work as also being alien because of this one thing that is so weird to me.
I will. I've got more to say on this later, but I have come around on a couple of the things you raised last time around some of the gender politics in this book. Yeah. Just before we get into it and do the summary and stuff, do you guys want to guess like what Neil Shute's profession was? Like what his background was?
Oh, I
thought I'd do a bit of bibliography at because I didn't want to do it last time because I figured that would color your reading, but now that we're kind of toward the pointy end of things.
Well,
I am guessing a geologist because gut reaction, no clue.
I feel like he sort of has a sense of like government structure and stuff like that. So I want to say, I don't know, just like some sort of administration person for the government.
That's pretty close to spot on. So he starts as a naval engineer, and part of the difficulty he has is that he has to write under a pen name because he feels like his fellow engineers won't take him seriously if they find out he's writing fiction. Remember, like, this is like 1910, right? Like, the world is in a weird place. Writing fiction is like not the best use of your time, as far as like serious people are concerned. And so yeah, he serves in the military for a while in the Navy, and then he eventually gets really bored of like working for the Navy, and he moves on to like the to working on airships. And then he gets really frustrated with the airships because like he doesn't have enough, like they don't give enough latitude. So then he starts his own like airship research development company that develops a bunch of stuff for World War II. So truly, you know, in the long form, responsible for some of the most horrific bombings in the history of our planet. But you know, did it because he needed to pay the rent. Many such cases. But yeah, so he was like a naval engineer, and then an aeronautics technology developer, essentially. So would go on to become Tolkien's kind of Tolkien kind of viewed this guy, and he comes up in the letters to a minimal extent, but views this guy as like sort of the progenitor of some of the worst technology ever made. And in particular, you know, like I don't know if you guys know this, but like Tolkien in his letters, he hates airplanes.
No, I did not know that.
Because you got to remember,
That's why he never uses the Eagles for anything, because he hates the.
Very good. But yeah, he hates airplanes because he's watching what they're doing in World War II and this just sort of senseless destruction and bloodshed that these machines enable. He's just writing these big letters to his son about it.
Was Shute an English immigrant? Did I remember you saying that?
Yeah, so he was English, and then he moved to Australia. I think after World War II.
Okay.
And he hates Americans. The way that he writes about Americans is like with this kind of dripping, like ironic detachment. He fucking hates him. And I think that's part of why you get this version of Dwight in this book. We'll talk more about it when we get to the gender politics, but I fully come around on a lot of what JM was saying last time, particularly with Dwight and Moira's relationship, where it's like one of my notes, and we'll get to it, but one of my notes is, hey, has Dwight literally done anything at all for Moira at all, ever?
He buys her a drink like 3 times a day.
Sure.
I don't know if that's me legitimately defending or not.
I don't think that counts. Like, well, but like nothing meaningful.
He takes her out. I mean, that's all. I mean, what more does he think that she wants? You know,
that's my point. Anyway,
yeah.
I don't think that he views her as a person with interiority. Is my point. Anyway, let's do the summary so we can get into it. I have so much to talk about today, and not enough time. So, when you're ready, Pat, could we please hear? I also want to point out, I skipped the Peter Mary stuff because I just didn't think there was much to talk about. Like, they have the argument. It's the exact argument we thought they'd have. But yeah, anyway, go ahead. Let's hit the summary, Pat.
Dwight and Moira get lunch before heading to a museum exhibit. Moira is indeed taking that secretary class as if a bunch of people.
Oop, as are a bunch of people.
Moira is indeed taking that secretary class, as are a bunch of people. Which is unusual, but she explains it's something to do more than anything. It's something to do more than anything.
Yeah, it's grammatically accurate.
Oh, okay. On the way back, Dwight stops.
No, it is. No, sorry. That wasn't me being a dick. It's just the cadence, which is unusual, but she explains it's something to do more than anything.
Right.
I'm just laughing because the scribbler immediately jumped up to defend himself.
Sometimes the way I write is not like legible unless you're me, is my point.
Which is unusual, but she explains it's something to do more than anything. On the way back, Dwight stops in to buy his boy a fishing rod that will never be used. He can't find a pogo stick for his daughter, and Moira promises to secure one. The Scorpion makes it back to San Francisco and sees the city half destroyed and bathed in radiation. They do, however, see lights in Seattle, likely just a hydroelectric plant, they decide. But when they come upon Officer Yalman Swain's hometown, he abandons the submarine and swims ashore. Dwight sends a young officer on shore to investigate the radio signal. As predicted, it's nothing more than debris on the transmitting equipment shifting in the wind. Moira visits Mary and they ponder the slight madness that's taken over everyone. We learn Brisbane is gone when Dwight receives a signal promoting him to the head of all US military operations, and in reality is the only American left on the planet. As July goes on, the country begins to wind down. People use their last reserves of fuel. Work all but stops, save the essentials. The Australian Grand Prix is moved up, and 250 cars compete in heats?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what that? Okay. The Australian Grand Prix is moved up, and 250 cars compete in heats for the actual race. Most races end in multiple deaths, and John ends up winning second place in his heat after a crash, guaranteeing a spot in the Grand Prix. That's all we read for today.
I realized that heats and competes is a tough one in the same sentence. Like a tongue twister.
Yeah, that's racing terminology that I didn't know.
Heath competes in the heats for the beats. You know. Yeah, I'll talk about the Grand Prix stuff when we get there. I'll give you guys the GP lore. Don't you worry about that. Bore the absolute shit out of you with my F1 knowledge. Now, yeah, we do start. The reason I skipped the Mary Peter argument is like in the summary at least, is I think from a material perspective, it's pretty thin. One of the thing I'm curious about that I do want to talk about is there is I'm going to try and say this without sounding condescending. There is a underlying assumption within the period of when this book is written that everyone in the story is implicitly of a Judeo-Christian faith, right? We don't know if it's like Christianity or Catholicism. We can probably assume, given it's Australia, it's Catholicism, or maybe they're Protestant. It's hard to say, but like there is a underlying assumption that everyone believes in God, in a way that feels very, frankly, very English and very American, in a way that like we probably wouldn't, if you were to set a book set in any contemporary country other than the US currently, you wouldn't be able to make that safe assumption, and you wouldn't be writing with that assumption in mind. And I just think it's interesting that this conversation they have is underguarded, or like before you can even kind of assess the conversation, you have to get in front of the fact that this morality is imposed by whether they'll go to hell or not, right? That comes up later with Mary and Moira, where she's like, you know, if I murder my kid, like, want to go to hell. That's just not like a going concern in other cultural contexts in the same way it is as like a thing that's sitting beneath all of this. And I think it adds a level of complexity that maybe I was dismissive of when I first read this when I was younger. Because, you know, like when you're like 18 or 19 or whatever, you're like, I know better than everyone. But what I find really compelling is that this actually raises this ultimate moral question for these people, because they implicitly believe in this sort of religious, material. If they do in fact kill themselves, right? Or this is what they believe. I should say it like this. They believe that if they take these pills and they kill themselves, that's like a sin, right? That's in fact one of the ultimate sins. That's up there with like coveting thy neighbor or whatever. Like it's on the list. You know what I'm saying? That's you get up to the pearly gates and they check that list and they go, brother, we're turning you around. You know what? You can't go to heaven. I'm not saying you can't go to heaven somewhere else, but you can't keep being in heaven here. You know, that's how that one goes. And so I think the first time I read this, I was quite dismissive of this, and I was like, these children, they still believe in God, you know, that type of vibe. But reading it now, I find it, I find Mary's reaction so much more legible within that framework. And that was how I was able to square the circle of what JM was talking about before, where this to me is an obvious thing that is going to happen, which is if we're all going to die in horrible pain, it would be great if there was a way to not die in horrible pain, right? But I only think that way because this book has been around for 70 years or whatever, and, you know, postmodernism happened and we've thought all of these thoughts about the world ending, and the 80s happened, and, you know, all of the different, movements of history have made these things much more present. But in a lot of ways, Shute here is one of the first people to put down on paper this question and especially in this implicitly kind of Christian moralist universe that is assumed for all of these characters, it's an even more dire conversation than, it's still bad now, right? Like if we had this conversation, it would still be horrifying, but it's played up as almost more horrifying because of this other underlying aspect, if that makes sense. And I found that more confronting this time than perhaps I was expecting to.
That's a good point. Although, yeah, I imagine if you're someone reading this, at a contemporary time, like that is a shocking and confronting idea. Having to kill yourself before, the more painful thing kills you. The more painful, inevitable thing kills you. But also, like, it's hard to gauge the actual like piety of people from mid 20th century Australia. Hey, like, like it's just, I don't know. There's such a vague sense of religiosity across people like that. Like, like my dad's family, for example, like they obviously, grew up in the 60s and 70s. They went to church and stuff like that. But like, man, after they were kids, just like nothing about religion ever again. Like they grew up completely secular. I grew up completely secular. And like how it's reflected in this novel, like it seems like the women in my dad's family were more religious than the men were. And yeah, like it's the kind of thing where it's like an innate reaction to have when you're talking about death, because nothing else comes to mind. No other framework of like death, or no other framework of afterlife is available to you to talk about and like sort of pass out these ideas. So when you're talking about killing yourself and dying, like, yeah, obviously you're going to frame that within what the church has told you growing up. But also, like, I doubt these are the kind of people that's like have the framework of like Dante's Inferno in mind, for example. Like I don't think they're much concerned with the exact, rules and proprieties of how to get into heaven, or how far you'll go down into hell if you do this particular thing. Because like even like Mary's she's asking Moira, like, won't I go to hell? Isn't that how it works? Kind of thing, like,
Well, yeah, and that goes to something Peter says, and this probably goes to the larger gender stuff that we can probably get into a little bit later. But like, the women in this book, and this is where I want to kind of not backpedal, but maybe like build upon the conversation we had last time, which is this reading more clearly to me demonstrates the politics of the gender of the novel than the first bit, like the introduction, because in this conversation, the women in the book are essentially reduced to being responsible for the emotional regulation of these men, and the men are charged to, like, quote unquote live in the world, as it were. When they have this argument, Peter's internal monologue is like really vile. Like, he has this throwaway thought where he's like, oh, these fucking women, like, can't they just live in the goddamn world already? And you read that and you go, that's just like, yes, that is how these men were taught to think. And yeah, to your point, Pat, like, the women are more religious because the technology of this particular religion in this particular era is deployed as like kind of it's the moral what do you call it when you go to the bowling alley and they put the sides up so you don't gut a bullet every time?
Guardrails. Yeah,
it's the moral guardrails of this era. That is also, by the way, how I have to bowl, because I am so bad at bowling. When we do our meetup and we do Smash Brothers, we also got to go bowling, because I feel like that we'll get annihilated. I feel
Oh,
like
yeah.
you two
I'm
would be
great at
really
bowling.
good at bowling.
Can't
yeah,
wait to destroy you.
I fucking knew it. I knew it. You want to get at bowling, JM?
I used to have my own ball before I very
Fuck's
stupidly
sake.
left it out in the do not leave them out in your car.
What?
Because it gets too so either the heat or the cold, heat making it expand and it'll crack, and
Oh.
then same thing with extreme cold. So I was very much into it for a while, and then after the ball broke, I was like, I don't want to drop another 200 plus, and so I haven't.
What are they
Please
made
tell me
of?
you have one of the polishing sacks.
Oh, the sacks? Yeah, you got a bag and all. Were you
Yeah.
part of a league?
No, I was never sociable enough to do that.
Damn.
It was really just me and one other guy that would go out pretty frequently. And this was back when it was cheap enough that you could go out and do multiple games every single week, and not break your wallet. The last time that we got a group and we went out and they told us the price for like two games, and like we all did a double take and said, could you repeat that? Because it was like, $70 for two people and shoes and like two games
Wow.
or something. And we haven't been back since.
Wow, that's so much money. I feel
That
like
is a lot.
that has not changed here. You'd walk up, you'd be like, I want to bowl 10 rounds. They'd be like, I don't know, give me a $5 note and buy a beer and you're good.
Well, I feel like it's always been sort of a bit expensive back in the day. So now that the price hasn't changed, I bet it's like a good deal.
I would expect so. The last time I went bowling
Yeah.
was early days of my previous job. And it was one of those moments of like team building where you're supposed to be like, you're supposed to be bowling these rounds and like getting to know each other or whatever. And essentially what it ended up being was just everyone else being really good at bowling and me just being the butt of the joke the whole time as I was throwing gutter ball after gutter ball. Listen, I'm good at a bunch of stuff. Bowling ain't one of them. You know what I mean? That's just God's truth. Yeah.
Now I want to do like a trip just for the purpose of changing that. Because I adore teaching, and even bowling is something that I've like when we're out and I'll be like watching my friends form, and I'm like, okay, you got to move two boards to your left, and then you're doing this and doing this, and we can fix you. We can fix you, is what I'm saying.
You know how in the first episode of Community where Britt is like, yeah, we'll go to dinner if they prove to be untutorable, and then Jeff is like, oh, they'll be untutorable. That's me as a student. I'm so resentful that you know more than me that like I make it impossible for you to teach me anything. So good fucking luck, pal. Anyway, sorry. I guess my point, and I want to talk about the gender more when we get to Dwight and Moira and their date, and how this all kind of plays out. But yeah, I guess I wanted to first start by agreeing in part with what Jane was saying last time, and just expand the aperture of what we were talking about to include the way that the kind of Christianity gets beneath a lot of this stuff, and the kind of like that to your point, Pat, that this the performance of the faith from Mary is so instinctual that I think it speaks to a larger like structural question that this book is unable to grapple with, because frankly, like postmodernism hasn't happened yet. The language and the techniques don't exist in any formal capacity. Shute can't write a book like Book of the New Sun where it's like, here's a man and he's the fucking worst. Like that isn't possible yet because we haven't come that far yet. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that I was perhaps a little dismissive last time of JM's point about the gender. And having gone through the edit and then reread the book to where we're up to, I think I tend to agree more than I disagree. But I have more big thoughts with that on Moira and Dwight. But I guess on the Mary stuff, this Mary conversation, is there anything else you guys wanted to hit on that argument? Argument? I don't know what you would call it. Confrontation?
Very ironically, I want to disagree.
Oh, for God's sake.
I know. But
With
specifically just with the religious reading. Because to me, and granted, I might have different thoughts going through the book a second time, but so far, I think that the that religion is in there more like just a a crutch that some people will lean on, but it's not the foundation of their politics like you would normally like. I definitely can see why you're saying that, but like Peter and Mary, they never go with Dwight to church. I think we've had two different scenes of Dwight going to church, and they never accompany him. Um, and they never, I don't recall them doing like prayers or anything before meals or anything like this. And when she mentions to Moira about like, won't I go to hell if I kill the baby, like that is, she is using religion as an argument to get her way. She is not using it because it's something that she deeply inherently believes in. So like I'm seeing religion used in a way that is not, it's not the politics of what is influencing them. It's something that they use whenever they feel like it might support their theories or whatever. Even Dwight that like goes to church and everything, like at some point he has a couple of paragraphs about like
Yeah,
not
he's
super like
I'm
believing
not.
it.
I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I just don't go in for religion. What?
Yeah.
Dwight, what are you
Well,
saying,
so
my
I
man?
I think that Shute is using religion like like sarcastically maybe. I don't know. It's not fulfilling the purpose that it should be fulfilling, or that it normally would be if all of these were devout followers. Because like there's not these like huge prayer groups of, like everyone get together and let's pray the radiation away. Like that would absolutely 100% be happening in an actual devout, group, community. And so I think that religion, while it exists here, is not in the normal way that religion is used in texts.
Right, I'm not
I
just.
think
Sorry, you go, Pat.
the the explanation for Dwight's relationship with religion and the church, I think also it's to the point, or it explains the other characters' relationships with religion as well. As you say, like Dwight, he goes to church, but then he goes, "Oh, I'm not a very religious person." Why does he go to church then? Well, it's because it's his way of life. It's the institution of America, and like broader Catholicism, or just broader a broader ecclesiastical institution that he's ingrained himself into. I feel like that also explains Mary's, or I don't think Mary is that she is saying what she says in order to win an argument. I think she does genuinely have that front of mind as like as an earnest question of, won't I go to hell if I kill my baby? Like she genuinely thinks that is something that will happen, because she's religious. But the reason why she's religious is because that's the only like frame of reference available to her, because she's grown up in where she's grown up. Anyway, that's what I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably right, and I guess and this is again going to be, this isn't me trying to use the like, well, actually we're from this culture thing, but but part of what is maybe difficult to imagine, maybe particularly given like where you've grown up, Jam, and like the American context, and particularly like the American context of like the 21st century, right? The sort of ultra ethno-Christian nationalist sort of machine that the Heritage Foundation of Bush Jr. kind of put into motion, is fun. I think that these characters, to Pat's point, it's not necessarily that they're like fundamentalist Christians, or that like they don't do these rituals in the same way that Dwight does. I think that Shute thinks, the way that Shute writes Dwight is, I think he thinks Dwight is a little bit silly for going to church, right? I think he thinks he's a little bit hypocritical, because when he goes to church, what does he do the whole time he's at church? He thinks about his wife and kid. and kids. He's not really participating. He doesn't say grace. He doesn't do, like, it's all, like, to Pat's point, it's all this kind of part of a larger ecclesiastic framework of behaviors more than it is anything to do with belief. And I think that Mary, part of what is tangled up in the argument that Mary and Peter have is that, to James' point last recording, he doesn't really seem to, like, I don't know, love that kid in her eyes. You know, when they get to the bottom of the argument, she says, "You're trying to tell me what I've got to do is kill Jennifer." And he says, "That's right. If it becomes necessary, you'll have to do it." And then she says, "I think you're crazy. I'd never do a thing like that, however ill she was. I'd nurse her to the end. You must be absolutely mad. The trouble is that you don't love her. You never have loved her. She's always been a nuisance to you. Well, she's not a nuisance to me. It's you that's the nuisance. And now it's reached the stage that you're trying to tell me how to murder her. If you say one more word, I'll murder you." And then she goes on to say, "There's a trick here somewhere. You're trying to get me to murder Jennifer and kill myself. Then you'd be free to go off with some other woman." And she just keeps spiraling in this argument. And
Valid crash out.
Valid crash out, because, hey, this guy is never here. The first opportunity he gets to fuck off on the ship, he's gone. You know what I mean? Like, just the realest fucking reaction to this. And he, this is the bit of dialogue where I just went, ugh. So he said, this is at the end of the argument, "This is a time when you've just got to show some guts and face up to things," he said. She turned and ran out of the room, and presently he heard her sobbing in the bedroom. He did not go to her. Instead, he poured himself a whiskey and soda and went out on the veranda and sat down in a deck chair looking out over the sea. These bloody women, sheltered from realities, living in a sentimental dream world of their own. If they'd face up to things, they could help a man, help him enormously. While they clung to the dream world, they were just a bloody millstone around his neck. It's like, this is not a pretty portrait of Peter, you know?
Yeah, well, that's the you're afforded to, as Peter puts it, live in the real world when you're you know, expected to be an absent parent, right? When you don't have to dedicate your life to raising your kid because your wife's doing it for you.
Yeah, also as if that
very,
isn't the
very,
real world.
Yeah, it's I mean, you know, it's very accurate and of, like, you know, the gender politics of the time, but yeah, it's also very short-sighted. Very shallow thinking by Peter.
So, devil's advocate for a second.
Not everything needs a devil's advocate, but feel free.
I know, but this is kind of interesting. So, in this time period, women were pretty much, at least mothers, like, they did not leave the home. They stayed there. They cared for the kid. Is she not literally separated from society to the point where she only gets information about what's happening in the actual world from her husband? So when he's saying, like, this darn woman won't accept the real world, but she's not part of the world, so she's, you know what I'm trying to say?
I don't think that's the same thing as saying sheltered from reality is living in a sentimental dream world. Like, if he'd been like, oh yeah, like, you know, I forget that she doesn't, like, I know what you're we're not on the...
Like, do they have a radio? Like, they don't have they definitely don't have a TV. Like, do they have a radio? Does she have any clue what would be going on in the world?
Yeah, they've got...
And then would this not be typical for all women, for all married women? Like, Moira would know more about what's going on in the real world because she goes out and interacts with people, versus Mary, who's only at home with the kid and only talks to Peter unless they're having a party or something.
Right. Well, I mean, they have the wireless, but, like, also this baby's, like, I don't know, 1 year old. It's not like Mary's never been out in the world. You know, I don't know. From, how do I say this? From Peter's perspective of the time, I understand, like, yes, like, I get what you're saying, but the point that Shute is trying to make here, I think, is, like, that at the end of things, this guy just cannot get over himself and his own, like, perspective and prejudice. He can't even, like, go to his wife in this moment. Like, I don't know. I think that representation. I'll use Tolkien's language here because it's probably a bit easier to comprehend. analogy and metaphor, and so like representation and applicability are two different things. And I think that what Shute is trying to do is represent the way that men are in this moment. And what you're saying, JM, is that the applicability of that criticism that we are making is challenging to make of the character in that time, because that's how characters were. And I guess my point is, like, that doesn't make it an invalid criticism, right? Or an invalid reading of this text. You know, I think it's meaningful and useful tension to put on the book. And like it, you know, Shute clearly thinks a type of way about types of men, in the way that he writes Peter and Dwight in large opposition to each other, right? Peter's a guy who has this big argument with Mary about, like, you know, trying to tell her how to kill this kid. He's obsessed with his career and the like dignity of work, as Shute calls it. And then Dwight, who he thinks is largely this kind of silly sort of kind of head empty American guy, is like deeply sentimental about his wife and kids in a way that Peter just isn't. Like, they're sort of, I don't know, they're two different types of men, but they're both insufficient in particular areas. And I guess I want to give Shute credit for producing these two different men with these two, like, they're not simply reducible to men of the era. Like, they have interiority. Well, Peter has interiority. Dwight sometimes thinks about things. But they have like these oppositional, they are oppositional positions of a type of man of the era in a way that makes me go, yeah, Shute is doing criticism here. Like, Shute is capturing a way that men behave and going, hey, isn't this fucked up? That in the final instance, Peter can't even go to his wife? Like, this is the most important conversation they have in their entire life, presumably. And he's like, oh, I'll just sit on the veranda and have Peter, come on. Like, I don't know. I just think that I think that we have to give Shute a bit more credit in his in the representation here could also be you could also take that allegory and do some application in a way that I don't think is disingenuous, and that I don't think it's just like post hoc, like, oh, like, we have gender politics now. Like, I do think Shute is doing some deliberate things here.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
Particularly with the Dwight Moira stuff, which we're going to get to. Because I think, to me, that was where your argument from last time, JM, that was where this date completely sinks the shot for me on what Shute is trying to do in this book with the gender politics. Yes. Sorry, I realized that was a big conversation, but I wanted to have it properly because we didn't really have it last time. Yeah. And yeah, really, just to Pat's point as well, not to walk past this, but like, very dire proposition, right? They have to kill their kids and then and this is a trick I think that Silent Night misses, right? Silent Night, the film, of course, that you can go and listen or watch our coverage of for Christmas last year. And a trick Silent Night misses is that all of the kids are old enough to take the pill. So they all take the pill at the same time as the parents, right? The parents don't have to, like, there's no order of operations like there is here, where it's like, yeah, for like pets and children, you have to inject them and then take your own pill, right? We don't get that layer here. So we do get that layer here where we didn't in that film. I think it adds a level of tragedy. There's a version of the film that I don't think is what ends up getting made. I could be misremembering, but there's a version of the adaptation where they don't have the pills. Maybe I shouldn't say this, because if it is the film adaptation, I can't remember, but there's a much more dire version of this that was proposed for the adaptation that I can't remember is if what they went with or not. We'll be
this
talking
book or Silent Night?
Of the film adaptation of this book.
Yeah, okay.
Because we'll be talking about that for the Patreon. At patreon.com/ZeroIndent. I just can't remember if that's the adaptational choice that the film actually makes, or if it's the one they proposed. But there's a version where the pills don't exist, and it's way fucking darker. Is what I would say. Yeah. Sorry. Anything else?
Yauman isn't concerned. He's like, oh, no pills. Oh, that's all right. I got a gun.
I got my sidearm. I'm good. I like that he's like, yeah, we don't have any pills. We can give you an automatic. It's like, what? Was he gonna shoot himself in the head with a fucking rifle? What are you talking about?
Yeah. Line up your foot in the trigger.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's personally how it's not gonna make that joke.
I mean, this is super dark. I'm sorry, but I lived with someone like for a month, like right before they killed themselves with a shotgun. So
You know what?
Yeah.
This isn't the first time this has come up on this show. Can you believe that?
Oh, is it not?
It came up in Daredevil as well.
Oh,
I
shit.
cannot remember under what. I
Yeah,
think it was the
that was
episode
dramatic.
where Dex was like spiraling or something. I can't remember where we talked about it, but it's definitely on camera lore that we've had before. Sorry, JM.
I won't say any more about that.
Yeah. You were gonna say something. Anyway, so yeah, let's. I want to talk about Dwight and Moira's date, and just the enemy that Dwight makes himself into in this scene. An enemy of all things that I hold sacred and dear. They go on this weird date. They get like lunch, and then they go to this museum. And there's like been art that's been made about like the end of the world and the war and stuff, which like kind of makes sense. And then the bit where I was like, this fucking guy is they come to this painting of Christ in front of a destroyed city. And Moira's like, oh, it's like really moving or whatever. And I cannot believe that Shute, like, and Dwight doesn't like it because it's inaccurate. And Shute puts his finger on something that is so prescient, it's almost incredible. He like, Shute looked up from his typewriter and went, what if I identified Cinema Sins 60 years before it happened? Because this is just a Cinema Sins guy being like, well, actually, that's actually not an accurate drawing of how New York would be. It's just phony. And he goes, I hate it like hell. She says, what don't you like about it? He says, everything. To me, it's just phony. No pilot in his senses would be flying as low as that with thermonuclear bombs going off all around. He'd get burned up. And then Moira goes, it's got good composition and good coloring. And he goes, sure, but the subject's phony. And then she goes, in what way? And I was like, this guy's my enemy. He says, if that's meant to be the RCA building, he's put Brooklyn Bridge on the New Jersey... Sorry, it's supposed to be said like this. If that's meant to be the RCA building, he's put Brooklyn Bridge on the New Jersey side and the Empire State in the middle of Central Park. And then she goes, it doesn't even say that it's New York. I'm like, yeah, bro, this guy sucks. It sucks. And
It was the style at the time. You don't understand.
you don't understand. Man, it also this conception of the American as such a cultural barbarist that Moira looks at this painting and she's like, it's emotive, it's effective. Her point about its good composition and coloring, she's saying that the composition of the picture, that's the artist has moved certain objects around to make the composition work, right? That's like how art works, you know. In a shot, and I'm going to use the language of cinema because you two are both cinema guys, but like, you know, the language of cinema, you might cheat reality to make a shot work in a way that is technically incorrect, but feels right. It's the same thing in like art composition. And the American looking at this, his only thought is like, well, it's inaccurate because things aren't where they're meant to be, and a plane like that would never fly that low under those conditions. And it's like, I think Shute's imaginary of the contemporary American of the time is pretty dim. Like, he kind of looks at this guy and he goes, you know, this guy is this, he's fetishized the aesthetics of faith, and he's aestheticized and fetishized the idea of like facts and logic in a rejection of everything else. And he finds it to be cringe if you're too Christian and too religious. Like, he says that later where he's like, yeah, like, I don't go in for religion like that, because to double down on that and to be too enthusiastically, you know, fundamentalist would kind of, the best expression I could think of was like, it would sort of reveal that, you know, all of this is fruit of the same poison tree, right? This whole aesthetic operation, if you lean into that part too much, it kind of reveals the whole apparatus as kind of morally bankrupt. And I love that Shute is able to do this at all in such a simple scene that you can fully read and just go, well, that was a nothing moment. But the more I sat with it, the more I was like, this is such an interesting reading to me that it's then he goes, he's then like, oh yeah, like let's go look at the Renoirs. And I was like, this fucking guy. Like, to be into Renoir is like, that's like to say that you like, what's like a universal like food everyone likes. That's if someone's like, what's your favorite food? And you say pizza. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? What do you mean? Like, have an opinion. Just very, very funny to me that he likes the Renoirs.
Man's over here bashing on my favorite food.
Rant over. Pizza's great. Pizza's great. It's just, that's like, you know what I mean? That's such a basic bit. That's a like, that's like, I'm so animated about this because it bothers me so much. You may as well not have an opinion on food then. You know what I mean? Like, this is a guy who goes, if he'd said Van Gogh, I'd be like, that's my boy. Like, because Van Gogh was like very specific and if someone today asked you what your favorite, like, you know, painter was or your favorite like visual artist, and you said like Andy Warhol, like you've identified yourself as an enemy. It's the same kind of thing.
Who's that artist that who makes you know, like doctor's office paintings that are really high contrast and they look a bit fantastical, but they're always about like hobbit houses on lakes and stuff like that. You know who I'm talking about? It's never mind. But anyway, that would be like a funny favorite artist to have.
Yeah, my encyclopedia goes deep, Pat, but that is not enough for me to go off of.
He's like he's like famous for just like making the most like, you know, but like boring like cookie cutter like, you know, paintings, yeah, that you just see in random offices and stuff, yeah.
Okay. I don't know who you're talking about, but I believe you.
Yeah. But I mean, that's completely in character for Dwight. I thought, like, you know, because the Renoir paintings he looks at, aren't they just like, you know, just tranquil scenes of you know, houses by a lake and, you know, people fishing or something like that, something along those vibes.
Yeah,
like, you know, that seems very like up Dwight's alley.
But the way that his internal monologue describes it is, it makes him seem a bit like a child, where he goes, they went and found the French art festival. To describe it as the French art is very funny. And he stood for some time before a painting of a river and a tree-shaded street beside it, with white houses and shops, very French and very colorful. Like a 5-year-old being like, I like this one. It's colorful. I'm being mean on purpose because I fucking hate this guy, but this really sealed the deal for me of like the way that Shute was imagining this American. Just so shallow. Everything is aesthetic, nothing is substantive. Brilliant. Just brilliant writing.
Yeah.
You haven't read the best sentence yet.
What's that?
I like them when they're full of color and don't try to teach you anything.
Oh, my enemy. This guy. The nemesis. Truly. He also goes, the other line I fucking hated was he goes, I hope the other pictures made up for, Moira says, I hope the other pictures made up for the religious ones. Catching the fact that to him, art is like an equation. This is the type of motherfucker who goes, well, but did the $60 video game give me 60 hours of value? This is this type of guy. You know? The type of guy to look at a game and go, how many features does it have? You know, instead of like, is it good art? And then he agrees and he goes, they certainly did. Shut up. Then he goes, this is where we get the line, but as for religion, that's just not my line. And then Moira says, this is exactly what James said before, you go to church regularly. And he says, oh, well, that's different. And she smartly decides not to argue with him about this, because what a bizarre thing to say. Yeah. Yeah,
well, yeah. To him, like, going to church and saying a Hail Mary is a very different thing, I imagine.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and this was sort of like the underlying, like, to what your point before, Pat, like, church to him is like a series of like ecclesiastic frameworks, or like, which is another way of saying like epistemological frameworks, right? Structures of meaning that produce the consistent reality that he that he operates within, more so than it is any real like thing that he believes in. It's a framework of morality, and it's a framework of community more than it's like an actual faith that he has. And this was my point about like the fruit of the poison tree, because if you get beneath it, you would ultimately he would have to accept, if he actually was able to come to that realization, he'd have to accept that he doesn't actually believe it, and if he accepts that, then all of these other frameworks go away and he has to build a new framework. That sounds like hard work.
Right. And religious paintings especially confront you with theology, right? Like, what are religious paintings going to be about? If not like, like drawing from every sort of source and motif from, the text, right? The text of the religious texts. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that sort of would make sense to me.
Yeah, and it's contemporary to their moment as well.
Everything that you just said, the framework of reality also very much applies to how he is seeing the art. He sees art as it is a copy of what he expects, or of how he sees reality. So when he's looking at a picture of a beautiful stream and trees and stuff, that's reality and it's beautiful and he can appreciate it. But when he sees the plane flying too low in the picture, that's not realistic. He cannot appreciate the art because it does not match his reality. And I felt like this entire time that you've also been like yelling at me, because this is exactly how I was interpreting film for the past like 5 years, and you've slowly been breaking me and leading me towards the light. And now I'm like, okay, I could see like you're not supposed to do that anymore, but he is seeing art how I used to look at art, and I can't be angry at him because I had to be led out of that. But also like the way you described his view of religion is also his view of art. So like yes. Shute was being very consistent with how he was portraying this dude.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't intentionally trying to like paint a portrait of who he used to be. That wasn't what I was trying to do.
I know, but it was still there, and I was like, ugh.
Well, I think that the difference between you and Dwight is that you were also capable of thinking that like a ray gun is cool and like a laser sword is cool. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference. Is that like Dwight is the kind of guy who, oh my God, Dwight's the kind of guy who is always reading a self-help book. He's always telling you about like the last self-help book that changed his life. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, if they're all changing your life, then like maybe you're not doing something. Like maybe if it's a thing of like, if you have a revelation every time you sit down to study, you might just be stupid. I'm sorry to tell you that, pal. Just a head empty. Anyway, people like this give me the absolute shits. But yeah, the inability for him to look at, again, you've got to consider the broader context, right? Consider the broader context of what's happening. It's the world is ending. You're on the clock. You're on a timeline. Someone has chosen with some of the time they have left to paint this image of Christ in front of New York City that's been obliterated by a nuclear weapon, and there's a plane in the sky because of course someone had to drop the bomb, right? And it's this portrait of like destruction, and Christ is there, right? This evocative image of like the savior of mankind is there at the obliteration, is there at the D-Day event that is going to cause the end of the world, right? Which is like a deeply like, we often talk about Christianity as being like ultimately like a death cult, right? Most kind of Judeo-Christian faiths are ultimately death cults if you follow the rabbit all the way down the hole. And it's like this painting is so evocative, and like in this moment where you're thinking about the time you have left, could you imagine, got all this going on, you're looking at this painting and you're not even emotionally affected a bit? Like, God, you suck. Like, this must be, if you know what I mean?
That makes sense though. Like
I know,
his entire survival mechanism is refusing to believe that the end is coming. Like he's buying gifts for his kids, right?
Yes.
So he would not want to look at that picture. He would not want this painting to affect him at all because he can't let it affect him because that's not how he's surviving, right?
Yes, 100%. That's where I was going, right? Like Yeah.
he also has to be dodging mines and stuff like that. So, he's well suited to the job.
Yeah. Which, and this is where I think Shute's politics come back around on us because, spoilers, Shute, not the biggest fan of communists, unfortunately. Not, in fact, my guy in the total summation of his politics, but he often talks about, and it's present in a lot of his work, is this idea of the dignity of work. It's ironic that he's not into communists because him and Marx would have a lot in common. But like
I mean, for a guy who's not a communist, he's writing a lot about people helping each other out and like,
Yeah, but he can't even imagine the death. What's the it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. Like, and Shute falls into that trap where people are still using money for some reason. Right up until like the 7th chapter of this book.
Which I adored that. Like I don't know if I would have thought to mention that if you hadn't just said it, but like towards the end, every different shopkeeper just realizes kind of like at the same time, like money doesn't matter. And so it's like, if you want a steak, you just come and ask for a steak and they'll give you the steak.
Mm-hmm.
And when they need more steak, they'll go and they'll ask to their distributor, and everyone is just doing trade, and commerce still happens to the extent that you could get the items that you want, but no one is paying for anything because money doesn't matter. And I'm like, this is like communism? Is this what they're talking about? Like, is this how the world should work?
Huh. Weird. Also, like, I do want to be clear that there are some versions of socialism and communism that do retain commerce. I want to be that guy. I don't want to pretend that they're all like, it's a utopia where money doesn't, like, go to fucking Sweden, they still have money. Go to Switzerland, they still have money. Like, it's just, they have basic human rights before anything else, and then money is for things that you want, as opposed to things that you need.
Yeah, but, and then people aren't compelled to fucking take everything that they can get their hands on because of scarcity. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then I guess the other thing I wanted to say is like that. Yeah, exactly. Because you can imagine the way that, like, you know, something like The Purge imagines people's reactions to these moments is like everyone just goes crazy and just like goes, fuck you, I'm gonna get mine, and like they loot everything. You know what hasn't happened in this fucking narrative? People haven't like lost their minds and looted everything. Like there's this kind of civility to society that is retained right up until the end. And we don't know what's happening elsewhere, right? You know, that could be what happened elsewhere. But I do like that it imagines people to be a bit more sophisticated than their baser instincts.
My argument was that is part of the age or the era that this was written in. Mm-hmm. Because I could absolutely see that my grandparents and their friends and, you know, my earliest memories of being around that older generation, like they would react this way. But now with as crazy as people are, I mean, people are getting like into fist fights and shooting each other over Pokemon cards. So like the end of the world, absolutely, it would be totally insane. It would not play out like this, but 50, 60, however many years ago this was, absolutely. Total different mindset of like humanity writ large.
I also, not to be mean, that is also going to be a cultural thing. America has I think I have to imagine that yes, there would be some aspect of that. If this were to happen here, I struggle to imagine this going a different kind of way than this. Like I don't know.
I could see that. Yeah, I definitely will say that I obviously can only speak to what's around me. I don't know how bad it is in other countries. But you know, the current social situation and all that. I know I see people in other countries say it's, you know, even their education systems are degrading and stuff like that. And there is, you know, depression and stuff like that, you know, across the globe. So I don't know how much to attribute as just America versus, you know, what is spreading globally. So hopefully Australia would be the gleaming ideology that we see in the book at the end times. But we'll let's wait a few more months and we'll see.
I was gonna say, let's see what happens by the end of the year. We'll find out. We'd still be going down the pub and having a pint. Let me tell you.
I mean, this is sort of related. Next chapter, I think when they're talking about opening the trout fishing for everyone because they're not going to get to do it, and then the guy who owns it is concerned about the sustainability of fishing trout early on in their cycle.
It's so funny.
But like everyone has his mind on sustainability, right? Which is interesting. Yeah, I don't know. That might be a uniquely Australian thing, but as I was reading that, actually, I was thinking that's very close to. There's this book called Dark Emu. It's about sort of. It's about dispelling the myth that like Indigenous Australians didn't have sophisticated agriculture and aquaculture, and in that book they talk about how Aboriginals did have really sophisticated systems of sustainability. They knew exactly, what parts to fish and to farm at different parts of the year and exactly how much to take so that the next year, they would regrow the exact same amount. They wouldn't run out. So yeah, it's interesting how that's, that might be some transference of knowledge and wisdom to these people here that, stuff about sustainability. Yeah.
Well, that, and like, if you think about it's been 2 years since the war. And so they've had this oncoming, impending doom for 2 years. They would have had to like rewire society to be sustainable for those 2 years, right? That's the other thing. So like, you can also imagine that that's kind of a knock-on effect of that. All right, so should we take a quick break and then talk about the pogo stick and then the final voyage?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we will be right back to talk about some of of course the Grand Prix, where I will be a little sizzle. I'll be imparting some F1 knowledge. You're very welcome,
brother.
Brother. All right, we'll be right back. If you like these handcrafted studies of genre fiction, please head over to zeroindent.com or patreon.com/zeroindent if you'd like to consider supporting us. Even if you just give us a follow on Patreon, that helps us out. Leave a comment, a like, and if you're in a financial position to do so, you can support us and get access to early content, additional videos, director's commentaries, audio diaries, and all kinds of different things we have coming up. It really makes a difference helping keep independent media crit alive. Once again, that is zeroindent.com or patreon.com/zeroindent if you'd like to support us. Excellent. Now, as promised, I said last time that I'd never had brandy, and you both looked at me like I was an idiot. Because if any of us were to ever have a brandy, it would have been me. So I went and I fetched some brandy last night. And I asked my mother, and she said, go French. So I've got some Saint Remy brandy. Extra old. I don't know if this is any good. I couldn't tell you. We're going to find out. We're going to do a little taste test. Live. You know what I'm saying? This is the kind of content that the people... That's what the patrons pay for, This, we won't put this up behind the paywall. I don't know. We'll see.
Is that right? Excuse to drink alcohol? No, this is what the people want.
This is what they want, Pat.
Giving them what they want.
I was walking to my kitchen for to make coffee, and I looked outside and I went, it is a glorious day today. I feel like today is like a good day drinking type weather. Imagine, Pat, having a Guinness on the veranda. You know what I'm saying? Guinness on the balcony.
Sound pretty good.
Oh,
That
delightful.
good.
It just kind of smells like red wine.
At the same time, if it were a horrible day and it were just like raining and storming, you'd be like, this is a perfect day to go into a pub and have a Guinness.
It's always a lovely day for a Guinness, all right? The only bad day for Guinness is when it's really hot. Okay, so we got... There you go. It just kind of looks like a normal...
Looks like whiskey.
Looks like whiskey.
This is a refined palate. Testing all his buds.
It tastes like it almost tastes like a sweet like a sherry cask whiskey or something. That's really weird. I think I quite like that. This is dangerous new information. Opens up all kinds of new avenues. It's quite sweet though. I think I would struggle to like do a lot of that. It might be quite nice on soda actually. I don't have any in the house at the moment, but there you go. Well, there you go. Little taste test.
I love that you were just hating on Dwight for going for the like basic French painter, and then you were immediately like, "Yeah, I went and got the French brandy here."
I'm a man of
think I
many
would like it?
contradictions. I think you probably would. It doesn't taste like, it's not as like alcoholic tasting. A little bit sweeter.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'd like it.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, brandy taste test done. Okay, so yeah, where are we? We already kind of touched on this, so I'll move through this just for the sake of time. Yeah, as we said, Dwight goes to buy presents for his kids. He buys he wants to buy a pogo stick for his daughter. He buys a fishing rod for his kid. He buys like a super fancy bracelet for his wife. He can't find a pogo stick, which is really annoying. Like it annoys him. And then he does that thing that we all do where it's like the second you can't get one, you start to really want it more. Classic consumerism. And yeah, Moira bumps into one of her friends, Hector Fraser, and she passes on the fact that Dwight is looking for a pogo stick. And then you get the absolute iconic line. Did I highlight it? Yeah, where Mrs. Fraser's like, only we thought he was courting you. And then Moira says, that's just where you've been wrong. It's me that's courting him. Which I thought was like, yeah, you tell him, Moira. Which, you know, we've talked a lot about the gender stuff, so I won't belabor this too much. But I just think it's interesting that she's the one that's courting Dwight. Because A, it's observably what's happening in the book, like it is semantically accurate. And also not typically how the gender norms of the time functioned. And I guess one of the key aspects here is that the formalized distinction between gender expression, and sex is like, it existed at the time, but it was in no way as accepted and disseminated as it is now, obviously, right? Like even the last like 20 years, we've come a long way. But one of the things that I think this does is that if we reimagine the scene in a modern novel, particularly when they finally kiss, so like she basically promises to bring him a pogo stick, and ultimately that's when he chooses to kiss her, if you will, which sort of implies that she buys his affection. I don't know. I found that a little bit. I was like, I don't know, man.
Well, yeah, she's courting him.
Yeah, I know.
That's the game.
Yeah, but like yeah. I guess my point would be in a normal novel when they have that conversation, he says something like, when he kisses her, he says something like, his wife wouldn't mind. It's for the both of us or whatever. He said something like that.
That was weird.
Very weird. I think in a modern novel, he would have said something like, oh, my wife would have wanted me to be happy. You know what I mean? That's a very different thing to say. So that was interesting.
It was, even though it was weird, I was like, that tracks though. Like that's what a boomer would say, I feel.
Oh, it completely makes logical sense.
Yeah.
I guess I'm using that to point out the difference in like the era of when this very much of the time, I guess is what I'm saying.
And I also want to point out Moira's like emotional intelligence in the scene where she's talking to the other woman, and the other woman says, oh, did he perhaps buy that bracelet for you? And then, but Moira immediately recognizes, no, he bought it for his wife Sharon. So she's a smart cookie.
And then she kind of does this pivot where she's like, oh, maybe he's courting like a young widow with a kid. Like maybe that's what the pogo stick, like she does a really good switch up to keep this woman on her toes.
I kept wondering if that definitely was for his wife, because I'm pretty sure like the only thing that he really says is like it would go good with her hair or something like that. Like, yes, it happens at the same time that he's getting the presents for his kids, so everyone would assume that it's for his wife. But then also, I kept thinking like I fully expect him to just give that to Moira at some point.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to give it to Moira too.
Yeah, there's a patness to this book where it's like in the last instance when they, presumably take their pills together, they'll dress up and he'll give her the bracelet or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could see that being Peter will throw one final dinner party or whatever, and they'll get gussied up and he'll say, I have something to complete your outfit. That type of thing. But here I've written under this series of notes about this, like the fact that Dwight has all the control in the relationship. No matter how obvious Moira is, unless he permits the relationship, it doesn't exist. Again, very much of the era. Like, she literally can't ask him out in a formal, like, that just isn't possible, right? No matter how many things she does, and eventually she wins his favor. And this is where I've written, my note here just reads, Dwight is a lab-grown experiment of being a charisma void. Because this whole interaction they have, like this whole date they have, he's just fucking empty. He's just head empty. Like, he's barely emotionally present. He sucks, and I hate him. And
well, but that was the point, though. And I know
it rules. I'm saying it's good.
But why though? Like, I never really got all of this was after they got back from the tour, right? And I never really got what they were trying, or I say what Shute was trying to do with this thing, because they kept saying that, Dwight was distracted and he wasn't acting like himself, and she could feel like he was barely present and all of this stuff. And I never really got what was supposed to be going through Dwight's head at that, during this time when he was so distracted. And I don't know if that's like a failure of the author to get across, or if it's a failure of me to not understand what he was getting across.
Did he get the bar the pogo stick? Did he get all that before the trip to North America? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, the way I read it is like, he's getting all these things because he knows his family's not there, but also he doesn't know until he knows, kind of thing. That's why he's going to North America, and then he goes there, sees no way in hell anyone survived, and then now he has a bit more of a definitive proof that his family probably isn't there anymore. And it kind of shatters puts another crack in his illusion just a little. Yeah, that's how I read it.
And the fact that like that guy chooses to stay behind and live his last day, and he sees America, and that signal in Seattle is nothing. Like, that's why he gives in to Moira, I think. Because he finally accepts that, like, this fantasy is just that, it's a fantasy. Yeah. I also really like the kind of tension that exists between this kind of courting thing that's happening with Moira and like Dwight's sense of duty as like essentially the last American, where even in the final instance he still feels this responsibility, and it's Moira who has to be like, this happens a little bit later, but she has to be like, hey, like there is, like, she doesn't say it, but he's like, oh, like Uncle Sam wouldn't like that, and she has the thought of like, that there is no Uncle Sam anymore, like it's just you, buddy. And she eventually has to talk him around into taking some time off, which I thought that tension was interesting, that he still feels this kind of compulsive duty almost. Some other stuff that I just think is really good. The description of where they send the guy out. So they go to America and they send the guy out to look at to go investigate the radio signal, and to go collect samples and stuff like that. They do this twice. And there's a great sequence where they send the guy out, and he came to a group of gray painted buildings, stores of some kind. There was a weatherproof electric switch upon an outside wall. He went to it and turned it, and a lamp above his head lit up. He turned it off again and went on. He came to a latrine. He paused, then crossed the road and looked in. A body in khaki gabardine lay half in and half out of one of the compartments, much decomposed. It was no more than he had expected to see, but the sight was sobering. He left it and went up the road. The communications school lay over on the right in the buildings by itself. This was part of the installation that he knew, but that was not what he had come to see. The coding office lay to the left, and near the coding office, the main transmitting office would almost certainly be located. And there's this very procedural way that this is written, where it's like this feels like Shute describing like a place he's been and like activities he's done, and it's very mundane, and it's not like romantic or like tense at all. It's just kind of sad and empty and hollow. And I really like the way that little sequence plays out. And then he just has he's got 15 minutes after he's shut down the signal to just read these magazines or whatever. Because it's well, what else is he going to do? I thought that was really fun too.
This was a great sequence because it's like, are you finding out all the answers, right? Like kind of the whole book has been leading up to this in a sense, so far. And yeah, we get to peek inside the box, and yeah, I like that line about where he sees that decomposing person. He goes, yeah, that's a very sobering view. Yeah.
But it's exactly what he expected to see, right? That's the detail I love, where he's it's shocking, but it's, everything's dead.
And I like how he doesn't go into other places where he knows there probably will be more bodies as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The light, he turns the light on and it works. When that happened, when I was reading this time, I was like, oh, are we going to a horror moment? Is there going to be something here? Because why is there still electricity?
Yeah,
and then
it's in the road.
Like in the road, and then it's no, this is just the hydroelectrics are still running. So mundane and so so practical. This is a real and I don't mean this in a mean way. This is a very conservative way to write this scene. Maybe I do mean it in a mean way. I don't know. I can no longer tell anymore. But this to me is Shute kind of going, what this scene needs. Again, imagine this in a modern novel. This would be tense. The author would trick you into thinking that there's still something following him, or he's tricking him because you could imagine this being this really hyper dramatic moment. But for Shute, he sort of correctly keys into what you were saying, Pat, which is, this is the resolution to all of these mysteries, and it's not exciting, and it's not tense. It's mundane, and it's the exact answers they expected, and the body is exactly what he expected to see, and the only thing left to do is sit there and read these magazines because what else can you do? It's very it's not quite deflationary, but it's close to being that.
I felt so attached to the perspective of this guy. Everything he was doing is stuff that I would have done as well. His curiosity was in tune with exactly my curiosity.
He does that.
So when he was like, oh, I still have 5 or 15 minutes left, and he was sort of a bit elated at that, and I was like, as was I was like, yes, he can explore a bit more.
he does he looks at the packet of Lucky Strikes once, and then he looks at them again, and I was like, this is a man after my own heart. And he's thinking about it, and he's like, can I take him?
Yeah, he was really despairing over that. Yeah,
so funny. And then he has that thought of they would probably kill me, and it might well be death to smoke them, but fuck, that'd be a good way to go out. Ugh. Not a lot of irradiated cigarettes in apocalypse fiction. Something we're gonna add more of that in. Fallout could never.
Yeah, I was just thinking they should add a nuka lucky strike or something in Fallout. And then I also love the bit where he's like, what's going on over there? Is there a party going on? Then as he gets closer, he's like, okay, they're all dead. They're all dead. There's a dead veranda party going on. But but that's another part where I was like, I would have to go get closer to see it as well. My curiosity would kill me.
For a second, did you go oh wait, what? Did you even believe for a second? Yeah, because I did. Where it's 5 men in khaki. Gabardine sat with 2 women in easy chairs around a table. Gabardine's military garb, by the way. Sat around a table. In the light breeze, he saw the flutter of a summer frock. On the table, there were highball and old-fashioned glasses. For a moment, he was deceived and went quickly closer. Then he stopped in horror, for the party had been going on for over a year. What a fucking
That's a great way
line.
to phrase that.
Like, god damn. Oh. He broke away and turned back and went back to the jetty, only anxious now to get back into the close confinement and the warmth of fellowship and the security of the submarine. On deck, he deflated and stowed the dinghy, wrapping up his magazines in the folds. Then he stripped quickly, put the helmet and the clothing into the locker, slammed the hatch down and secured it, and got down into the escape trunk, turning on the shower. 5 minutes later, he emerged into the humid stuffiness of the submarine. Right, we go from this, like, lurid, descriptive prose that's sort of very procedural, and, like, here's everything that's happening, and it's very step-by-step. And the second he gets anxious, it's like, like, on the deck, he deflated and stowed the dinghy, wrapping his magazines, and he stripped quickly, put the helmet, like, the prose is now anxious to get him back in the submarine, as he is anxious to get back in the submarine. And to your point, Pat, that subjectivity is so well retained throughout this sequence. I thought it was really excellent basic writing, done incredibly well, just at a sequence level. Like, you could pull this scene out and teach it in a class of, like, this is how you communicate subjectivity and how you deliver emotional beats and how you pace out a scene. I've talked about this before, but, like, the length of the prose inflates and deflates to reflect the length of the thought and the interior, the subjectivity of the interior subjectivity of the narration, where it's like, yeah, the bits where something is happening quickly and he's anxious, those happen quickly, and they're pacey and they happen in rapid staccato. The bits where he's confident or working through something, they happen slowly and logically. The prose and the rhythm and the structure reflects the content itself.
And I also like how he's deliberating. I want these cigarettes. I can't take them. The captain said I can't bring anything back on board. No, I can't bring these things. And then he ends up bringing the magazines back on board. Like, after all he kept reminding himself not to.
So funny.
I thought that was a nice touch as well.
Wait, because
that's what I was waiting to ask about. Is, like, are those like Chekhov's magazines? Because nothing ever comes of this.
Nah, I think it's just like a human detail. He's, like, homesick, and, like, here's some magazine. Here are the last 3 Washington Post magazines ever printed. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but like, assumedly they're radioactive, and so now the raft has been bathing in this radioactivity. So whoever gets the raft out next is going to get sick.
He does.
Unless
he logics it away where he's like, what is he? I'll see if I can find it. He does produce.
But also, he's just willing to take a risk. He just doesn't care, I think.
Yeah. He hesitated for a moment, then he rolled up the 3 magazines and tucked them under his arm. The dinghy and his radiation suit would be hot and must be left in the locker on the outer casing of the submarine to be washed away by the seawater. He could roll up these hot magazines in the deflated dinghy, and perhaps they would survive. Perhaps they could be decontaminated and dried out and read when they got back to the safe southern latitudes. So he's like, in the same way the dinghy will get deradiated by being in the depths of the ocean, perhaps the magazines will be as well. It's irresponsible. I'm not defending his actions.
Well, that's not even, like, that's not where I was coming at it from. I was coming at it more from, like, the magazines were only brought back because the captain said don't bring something back. Like, from the writing perspective, like, that's the only reason that they exist, right? So then the fact that nothing ever, that was part A, B, and then there should be a C, which is the follow-up. What's the resolution to the magazines being brought because he was told not to bring the magazines? So because there's not C, I'm left, like, confused as to, because there's no resolution to this little mini subplot. Unless the whole thing was just pointless and it was just, this is something that, like you said, I like the second dude's doing it.
The second something doesn't solve a problem for you, you're like, it's pointless. It's like, no, it's texture. it's building this character's subjectivity, and it's adding complication to the, like, the plane
is too low in the sky. What do you want me to do?
I know.
the painting is stupid.
That's what I was gonna say. No, you're supposed to go, hey, why did he do that? What came of that? And it's just a human moment. Yeah, it's a human thing.
But I feel like this book is full of Chekhov misfires. I'm going to coin that term.
There you go.
Like the
Ryan was
radio
la-
signal, for example.
That was literally in our group chat this morning. That's so
Yeah.
funny. Love that. Yeah, I mean that is sort of the point, right? Is like reality. One of the complications of narrative is because you're trying to tell something that's complete and compelling. If something is too complete and too compelling, it becomes trite and it feels like you kind of lose that sense of texture and reality in the world. And so doing things like this, like you want to create a simulacra of reality, right? You want to produce enough signifiers of reality to be able to tell your story, but you don't want to have the signifiers subsume the signified, because then you end up in like weird postmodern territory where it's like, you know, like Fight Club or whatever, where it's so obviously not real that sometimes it can be difficult to engage with, or you have to engage with it as non-real, and then that's how you get to the real behind it. This to me is just like a classic modernist novel, like the modern novel, as it were, right? You know, that emerges from Flaubert, right? This is that classic. Flaubert is full of shit like this, where it's just like you'll follow Madame Bovary just like going to the shops or whatever, and she'll buy like a loaf of bread, and then it'll just cut to the next chapter, and you're like, wait, what the fuck was the point of that? And it's just it's working that subjectivity, and it's trying to show you how people think in the little human foibles they have as they make choices that don't neatly comport into narrative, is how you build the texture of a world. And yeah, I don't know. The book is, as you say, Pat, it's full of these, right? The painting never goes anywhere. That doesn't come up again. The like playpen that he gets for his kid doesn't go anywhere, to my knowledge. Like, yeah, it's kind of full of stuff like that. Anyway, yeah, so he gets back from the cruise, and he's got the flu, which is, and dude, to get the flu at the end of the world, what a bummer. You kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sucks.
That would suck.
Again, I've written here, if this was a modern novel, he goes to Moira's farm or whatever, and they like nurse him, you know, while he's sick or whatever. I've written here, in the modern novel, this would be the first love scene.
Yeah, that's true.
Kept waiting for it to happen. It kept not happening.
Well, also like, I think being nursed back to health, you know, by a hot woman in a barn out back, that's a romanticized setting that is only in like only in your imagination. Like no modern person is probably gonna experience that, whereas like someone back then, it probably would experience that, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be a trope, be a trite trope back then, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, how do you get to I think it's like the Princess Bride or whatever. It's like through all of those tropes being kind of speared through with satire.
Yeah.
Now, and then I love this. He can't even fucking rest, man. Like, he's like, I got the flu at the end of the fucking world. And then John is like, I need you to check this paper. You kidding me, John? Brother, I'm taking sick leave. Don't call my phone. You know what I mean? And you know, this to me, I'm curious if this was the same for you guys. This was the point in the novel when John decides to do this. This is where I started to feel like all of this stuff was completely pointless. Like all of the stuff related to the submarine and the work and stuff. Curious if that happened for you. I kind of went, like, this feels like a series of increasingly pointless tasks. It's kind of the moment where I had that, where like he goes through all this trouble to get in the car, and it's an excuse for him to drive it or whatever. But it's just such a waste of time. I
mean, yeah, from the very beginning, I got the vibe that, you know, everyone was keeping themselves busy, you know, from the just to not think about the inevitable. But like, yeah, I guess it's more concrete now, and the characters have a reason to think so as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now that they've exhausted their.
I had that feeling long before that. Much of what they were doing was pointless. However, I had a different reading on the papers, like, I think that John needed to have the papers signed because Dwight would have torn into him had he not done that.
Mhm.
Because that is, Dwight is the commander. He has to sign off on stuff. Dwight is obsessed with doing things by the book because that's what Uncle Sam wants. So I don't think that was John's problem. I think he was doing what he knew that Dwight wanted.
Mhm.
What were the papers about? Is just a report on their trip?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and he wanted to cross out the part about the Yalman leaving. Is that what happens?
He does make him cross something out, doesn't he?
Yeah, I don't remember if it specifically said what it was. It was just like, I don't like this last paragraph, leave it out.
It's something to do with him. I know he's in it. I know yeah. I know what you're talking about, Pat. I just didn't write down exactly the reason. Yeah.
But come on, man! Like end of the world, like you're like, oh no, I want to hide. I don't want this to get out. Like, come on, man, just record it.
Yeah, it's fine. Come on, man.
Yeah.
On page 177, I've just circled the word Brisbane multiple times. Brisbane mention. Always fun to see our backyard. One thing we did skip over is we touched on it a little bit before, but the Mary Moira conversation while the guys are out on the cruise. So Mary's like lonely and she calls Moira and she's like, hey, like maybe you should come out for the night. And Moira does, which is really fun. And then this is where they have the conversation where Moira's kind of like, you know, the first thing Mary says is, did you ever murder anybody? And then Moira says, me, not yet. I've often wanted to. Country telephone girls, mostly, which is very funny. And then she goes, this was serious. It's a frightful sin to murder anybody, isn't it? I mean, you'd go to hell. And then she says, Peter told me I might have to murder Jennifer. And then they go through this conversation and she explains it. And then I love the way that this paragraph ends. She produced a little screwed up ball of handkerchief and gave it to Mary. Dry up and let's make a cup of tea, and I'll go and put the kettle on. They had a cup of tea before the dying fire. And the dying fire was very pregnant to me coming off the back of the road. It really I think it resonated to me a little bit just in the context of what we've been talking about, where it's like, yeah, like the dying fire, it's a very particular way to phrase that. I just thought that was very evocative and I was quite emotional reading that sentence, or that section rather. I thought it was a very nice way to end it. Quite melancholic.
And Moira's being such a good friend here as well, like totally making up for fucking Peter's like, you know, lack of emotional intelligence or like, yeah.
She's turned her shit around too. Like this is like a different Moira than in the first half of the book, right? You know, she's like not drinking all the time. She's like learned, you know, like she's really worked on herself. Waited to the very last minute to get her shit together. But that seems to be weirdly, that seems to be the story all over the place. Is that in these final months, everyone is getting their shit together, you know, which is quite peculiar.
Yeah. Talking about how there's less drunks in the street and stuff like that.
Yeah. Wasn't sure what to make of that.
You know, something.
David ran out of Guinnesses and he went back home.
Damn. Don't joke about stuff like that. There'll always be Guinness. Might have a Guinness after this, now that you've said that. And I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't reminded me, okay? It's not my fault.
Oh, shit. Yeah. I'll take the blame.
Yeah, twist my arm, Pat.
Something that hit me in these next chapters, and I don't know why, but was the kind of like inherent sexism of the time in which this was written in how he constantly refers specifically to Moira, where he will not use her name.
I know.
And he will just call her the girl.
It's crazy.
All the time, the men will have their names, like Peter did this, you know, Dwight did this, but then the girl did this. And it keeps, once I like clocked it, I just noticed how much it's used. And I'm like, ugh, that really was just like the mindset back in the day.
100%. I've written in my notes, in air quotes, the girl, geez, he really does just see her as a body, doesn't he? Like, she's not a person to him. Yeah, I also clocked that and had a big eel moment myself. I thought it was particularly bad when he's at the farm. And like in the same room, John gets to be John, but she's just the girl. Like that was where the contrast of that really, really hit home for me.
Is this from Dwight's subjectivity?
Yeah.
Or is this a yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, same with
well, it's also just
Peter
narrator's subjectivity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Peter also refers to Moira as the girl in his narration, but yeah, there is this slipperiness to like perspective in this book, to be fair. But yeah, this section is written once they're in the house. Sorry, once John is in the house, it's then from Dwight's perspective. That's my reading. But again, it is a free, indirect narrator, but it does sit close to characters in particular scenes. And yeah, that was the scene where I really noticed it and went, oh, come on, man.
You know, does he talk about Mary the same way? Is she also referred to as like the girl or the wife or the woman or something like that?
No, she's married because she's a married woman, so she's a person. I think is the
well, giving just like a little bit of credibility. I started thinking about the BBC Sherlock and how like he called her the woman because it was a title of respect, and I'm like, is there something like that going on here? I don't think so.
That's also not what happens in that fucking show. He calls her that because he's a sexist lunatic. Anyway,
well, in his mind, it's a yes. But in his mind, he means it respectfully.
I don't think he reduces an entire gender into one person. I don't know, man. Come hit me on a different day and see what I say in response, because I'm not convinced. Not convinced. But yeah, just to the point of like everyone getting their shit together. In what was left of Australia that year, a relief of tension came soon after midwinter. By the beginning of July, when Broken Hill and Perth went out, few people in Melbourne were doing any more work than they wanted to. The electricity supply continued uninterrupted, as did the supply of the essential foodstuffs. But fuel for fires and little luxuries now had to be schemed and sought for by people who had little else to do. As the weeks went by, the population became noticeably more sober. There were still riotous parties, still drunk sleeping in the gutter, but far fewer than there had been earlier. And like harbingers of the coming spring, one by one motor cars started to appear on the deserted roads. It was difficult at first to say where they came from or where they got the petrol, for each case on investigation proved to be exceptional. Peter Holmes's landlord turned up in a Holden one day to remove firewood from the trees that had been felled, explaining awkwardly that he had retained a little of the precious fluid for cleaning clothes. And then we get this beautiful, like, little free and direct section of, like, how different people, you know, have hoarded petrol or found petrol or whatever it is. And everyone starts driving cars again, and it's just really, like, everyone gets real into cars for a minute, which is super fun.
That's funny that everyone like was secretly stashing fuel. Like
Yeah.
that's very real. Like, and that guy's like, no, I'm just keeping it to clean clothes. You know, it's
Yeah,
like,
brother,
that guy has like, there's a giant oil tanker in his bbackyard. He's like, no, I just have a little bit.
Dwight being like, well, I mean, I'm the head of the US Army. I should have transport, right?
Yeah.
So funny. And yeah, Dwight, so there's one plot detail I think will be relevant later, which is that Dwight, off the back of all of this, Dwight sort of fancies a fishing trip for some reason. He wants to go catch trout. I don't know, man. Moira convinces him to take time off. Obviously, it doesn't open till later in the season when it's warmer in the mountains. And so naturally, because Dwight never does anything himself and Moira does everything for him, she lobbies to have the fishing spots in the mountains opened early. And co-constituent to that, we have the Grand Prix being brought forward, which is weird because now it's earlier in the year. Anyway, and yeah, then we get some fun racing stuff, which we can talk about. But yeah, did you guys have anything before the Grand Prix?
I feel like I need to defend Dwight because you've just made him your absolute nemesis.
Yeah.
And because he just like mentions to John like, "Oh, I wish I could go fishing," and then like Moira did all of this stuff as a gesture of love, right? And it's not like he was like manipulating her, like he wasn't doing the thing. He just was like, "I wish I could go fishing," and that was it.
Dwight Towers,
was it.
history's greatest villain. I'm saying it now. I'm obviously being dramatic for effect. No, it was the moment where suddenly everything in that relationship was recontextualized for me, and that's where I went, oh, he's literally done nothing for her. Like that was the moment where it really clicked for me.
I'm just picturing in my head, he's just like, man, I wish I could just go catch a salmon. And then David just jumps up, perfidy!
I kick in the door. It's so funny. Also, not to be mean, but like, fishing kind of sucks. I don't know about you guys. Kind of.
Nope. I'm with you.
It's super boring.
No, man.
You know, I get it.
I love fishing if it wasn't like, you know, people endemically overfishing the planet and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. Putting your feet up with a ice cold beer on like a hot day, great. Don't need to do that while I have a fishing rod. I do that anyway. Like, that's a solved problem for me.
But the fun part is not catching fish, and then once you catch fish, then you got to get all dirty and stuff.
You got to deal with the fish.
I don't want that.
Also,
I don't want this part.
I don't even like seafood. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, this is an unpopular opinion. I'm given to understand, but like, I just think that like, seafood in general is such like, fish in particular. I just can't stand fish. I don't know. People, try. You should have like a salmon steak, whatever. I'm like, no, it's still bad.
I feel like that's a big personality trait that I've never really clocked on you.
I try to hide it.
No, I think about it. I've never seen you eat anything other than like a steak.
Okay, well, I'm not. You make that makes me sound like a man drink beer, man eat steak.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
That lines up to me.
I do.
He likes a chicken burger. We know that.
That's true.
That's true. That's true.
I literally, can I tell you? I had one yesterday just to spite you. And it was good. I had it. It was delicious. It was a grilled. I love a grilled chicken burger. All right, I'm in my I'm working out, trying to be healthier. It was incredible. It was like, had like a beautiful house made barbecue sauce. Oh, it was so good. Some fresh lettuce, tomato, like a little bit of it was like a spiced pickle. Oh, delicious. Anyway,
I want you to know I have this whole comedy bit I'm trying to work out where I go visit Australia and we're going out to get lunch and I order a hamburger and then I have a 5-minute argument with the waiter when I'm trying to tell them what I mean by a hamburger.
Yeah, they wouldn't know. Because what would you... Because a hamburger here, Pat, that would be a cheeseburger, right?
Yeah, well, in McDonald's, a hamburger is without the... No.
Let me check.
Without the cheese, maybe? I don't know.
Except remember, I'm only doing this to screw with David, so what I'm actually trying to order is a ham sandwich.
Well, I think you run the real risk of that happening, I think, is the issue. Let me see. Hamburger. Let me see what's in this bad boy.
I mean, that's some crazy stuff. I would never have associated a hamburger with a sandwich with ham.
100%
crazy shit.
Aussie beef topped with onion, pickles, zesty ketchup, and mustard. So it's a beef burger without cheese with onion, mustard, and ketchup.
Yeah. Checks out.
That makes sense.
Which is awful. But,
that doesn't sound good.
It is what it is.
I mean, hey, don't eat McDonald's in the first place, but like that does sound like a worse version of their products. My friend, I don't want to say her name because I don't want to put her on blast, but she adamantly defended McDonald's chicken burgers the other night in a way that I just was like, this is an incomprehensible hill to die on. I couldn't. It was bizarre.
And Aussies are weird, eh? Like they'll be like, yeah, man, I fucking like they'll die on Red Rooster and Pizza Hut.
Queenslanders
and
are
like,
dude, Queenslanders and Red Rooster, I don't know what has gone wrong with our state, but it's crazy. Queenslanders will just like, they will to your face lie to you about how good Red Rooster is. It's nuts.
Bro, Cairns is like a Red Rooster cult. Like I see it on the Cairns subreddit all the time. It's weird.
Yeah. My friend, and I shit, so we were having this argument the other night, and she was like, oh yeah, like, and her and her sister really love Red Rooster. They're from Townsville. And to the point where if it's been like a long day at work or whatever, because they live together, all they have to do is send each other a chicken emoji, and that signals that it's Red Rooster for dinner. They've developed a semiotic language.
The Red Rooster marketing department is writing this down. Like, oh my god!
And it's just like, yeah, like it's a genius campaign. Could you imagine? You just send a little rooster, and then they send the rooster back, and you're on. Like,
I can so vividly imagine the cheesy saccharine commercial right now. Yeah.
Anyway, I guess the point, Jam, there is that might backfire on you in ways that you could never predict. That would be very, very delightful for me. So I'm all for it. Maybe not a bad time. Maybe a bad time to fly though. To be fair.
Yeah, I keep wondering. Like I've heard that you're still able to travel fairly well in the U.S. We've been like insulated from everything so far, but then I was like, would I just get stuck in Australia? Could I get back? And would that be a bad thing?
I was gonna say that might be a solution to a lot of problems.
Yeah. Like literally, it's like the survival state, country, whatever. So I'm like, maybe I should go get stuck there. Maybe that would be maybe that'd be a good game plan.
Well, so I've never been to New Zealand, which is like devastating because I want to go see where them hobbits from. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And obviously, it's a great country and whatever, but like hobbits, you know what I'm saying? It's so like
culture and whatever. You got hobbits, man.
Whatever. Auckland, etc. I get it. The economic depression happening over there, not important. Hobbits, though, let's go check them out. Imagine having a pint of beer in Hobbiton. You kill. I do that, and you could shoot me in the head. I'd die happy. I'd be like, cool, done. Bucket list. That's the only thing on my bucket list. I think. Oh, having a pint in Hobbiton. Yeah.
Could I rent a sword and run across the rolling hills?
Oh.
Well, drunk as fuck.
Yeah, we'll get you a
we need to like,
pal.
With me, lads.
We need to pick a year, and if the world has not ended by then, we'll have a trip, and we'll go do the Hobbit tour.
We'll do the Hobbit tour. It'll be for content, so it'll be tax deductible. We'll be those annoying people filming the whole thing. You know what I mean? But yes, how expensive is it to fly to New Zealand?
I don't think you want to Google that right now.
Oh, at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, let's wait a little bit.
Brisbane to Auckland.
1,500.
What's your guess?
That's my guess.
I have no like scope as to how far away you guys even are. So figuring out how to get from, I've got zero idea. I've never even left the country, so I've only flown, semi-locally as far as the globe is concerned.
Shockingly not as expensive as you would think. I projected out a little bit. It's like August or whatever. Like $700 return.
Ooh,
that's quite affordable.
That is a good deal.
Yeah.
I doubt it will stay that cheap. Diesel was over $3 the other day, and I went, "Oh my fucking god! It is the end of the world." The petrol station. I promise we'll wrap up in a second. The petrol station. We're gonna talk about the Grand Prix. The petrol station near my flat keeps running out of petrol. That's how bad it is, and it's like because it's like advertised as like a cheap. Like their thing is like they do cheap petrol or whatever. And yeah, they every time I walk past them, they're out of fuel. It's crazy. Yeah. Anyway, it's almost as if every Australian suddenly realized at the same time that all of their fuel comes from Europe. How prescient. Okay, let's talk about the cars. So, they moved the Melbourne Grand Prix up. They can't do it at Hyde Park. Albert Park, because Hyde Park's in Melbourne. That's the wrong one. No, Hyde Park's in Sydney. Yeah. No, they can't do it at Albert Park because there's just no way to get enough people out of the way or something. It's a very weird logic. It's not important, but essentially, the race becomes for racing drivers only because most people can't get 40 miles out of the city to go see it. Everybody in Victoria and southern New South Wales who owned a fast car, new or old, seem to have entered for the last Australian Grand Prix, and the total of entries came to about 280 cars. Which, I mean, that's a lot given like a standard track used to be 18 and is now 20 drivers, so a significant more than normal is what I would say. Yeah, they have to race in heats to qualify, which is really funny.
It's less Gran Turismo and more Mario Kart, it seems.
Yeah, it's very arcade racy type energy,
Yeah.
And yeah, it's quite lethal. And as we were saying at the start, like it's quite famously the Melbourne Grand Prix when it rains is incredibly dangerous. We saw that last year, and it was just an absolute shit show. Particularly at the moment in our current, or in the previous era rather. But yeah, like back then, it's so funny how many of these issues like just haven't changed because it's just endemic to racing. Like at one point, just before John's race, it rains a tiny bit and it wets the track again. And it's like, well, that's a problem. Like that's all it takes for it to go from like kind of fine to like super dangerous, even to this day. But yeah, the other things that are like super endemic is like if someone in front of you slows down too much and there's too much of a speed differential, it's difficult to see that when you're going at like, 200 kilometers an hour. So you don't know that you're about to crash into someone until you're about to crash into them. And, there's moments like where one of the drivers, like, to avoid hitting someone else, kind of empathetically goes off the track, which is absolutely what happens in racing to this day. That's how Ollie Behrman had his crash a couple weeks ago. Like, it's just it's very funny to see how little has changed, even as there's so much more, safety mechanisms. And like, obviously the reason why they all keep flying out of their cars is A, they're not wearing seatbelts, and B, they don't have, there's a little bit of F1 lore, and then I'll shut up, I promise. They've since invented this thing called a halo, which is like a piece of carbon fiber that goes in front of the driver so that if they flip, they're essentially protected. It's kind of like a roll cage, but it's less severe than that. And it's in the absence of this, like, yeah, these cars are going off the track and like rolling, and people just dying instantly, getting injured. And for a lot of them, it's like, yeah, this is preferable to dying in agony or like taking a pill or whatever. It's a very authentic, like, Moira's kind of horrified by it, but it's like these guys are kind of going out the way they want to, which is doing this thing they love. And yeah, the
fucking carnage, dude.
It's
so
crazy.
Many people die.
So many people die, and John wins his race by like airbud rules, where he realizes that all of the other drivers have gone off the tracks. He's like, well, I can get second if I just keep driving, which is very good.
That's pretty dark when he's like, oh, I'm out of the race. I'll go check on this guy who's dying. Go check. Oh, he's dead. Oh, maybe I can finish the race. Goes back.
Yeah.
I really thought that they were going to do the Talladega Nights thing and he was just going to run across the finish line.
They should have done that. It's very funny. It's just a really cool, like, there's nothing else happening. And I think this is the really, like, the kind of what we might think of as like the last hurrah of, we're building up to this Grand Prix as like the ultimate kind of grand finale of the book, which is really fun. And obviously the big question hanging over the whole thing is like, will this get John killed? And is that even a bad thing, right? That's kind of the one of the things this chapter sets up at the end here. And then just like some other ghoulish stuff, like he ends up, he takes the like transport truck from one of the guys that dies. He just asks the person's wife and she's like, yeah, whatever, you have it. Like, I'm not using it. They go and they salvage pieces from all of these crashed cars for their car.
Oh, and the description of how they did it, it was kind of like they were like a taking body parts from dead people is kind of the feeling that I got.
Hmm. Yeah, it's 100% trying to like evoke that feeling of like, yeah, salvaging, kind of like gosh, like kind of vulture type stuff. You know what I mean? Um, commenced the somewhat ghoulish task of stripping the dead bodies of the wrecked cars of anything that might be serviceable to the Ferrari. It was dark before they finished, and they drove back to Melbourne in the rain. Yeah, pretty dark.
I was rooting for the lone woman driver, and then I was sad when she toppled and died.
She was the first to
And
go.
then I was a bit shocked actually. Yeah, and I was like, man, she's just dead already. Fuck.
Which is really interesting with as like anti-feminist as like the book is, it has Moira being pretty progressive in how she acts, and then this female driver who is doing a very, you know, male sport, and so I'm like the writing and the way they referred to or the way Shute refers to women and all of this stuff is like problematic, but then also he's including women in ways that are kind of progressive.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, it's. I mean, I read that and I was like, but like that's also very realistic. Like, there's always a minority of car enthusiasts who are women. Like in any situation that I've experienced, like there's always at least like one or two women who are like into cars among the guys.
Mm.
Yeah,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, Shute can't get away from the fact that like people exist, and like that like
Well, I could
gender is a social construct. Like, yeah, he's reflecting reality, I think.
I have nothing to base this on, but I feel like in this point in time, like she would have not been allowed to drive because she's a woman. Like if this were like the real Grand Prix.
I mean, yeah, that's still not a thing. Yeah, it's different back then. Okay, I guess I'll say it this way: it's different back then because sorry, I'm trying to think of a delicate way to say this. The F1 is such a it requires so much financial invest in real life, right? It requires so much financial investment that it's often old moneyed families that could afford to do it, and that typically meant, you know, rich, you know, sons that have inherited tons of money or that like come from like, you know, family wealth and stuff like that, investing that money, who have control over those finances. So partly it's a acculturation thing of, yes, like women aren't allowed to race, or it's like not kosher for them to race, but it's also a larger socio-political framework that is limiting access to that sport from women. And yeah, it's probably not the case that it would have been a formal "you can't race because you're not a woman." It probably would have more been closer to something like, it wouldn't have been possible to be in a position to race if you're a woman, if that makes sense. Like they have the same output, don't get me wrong, but they are semantically different. And it's part of what I think is difficult about, and it's part of what we've all learned, you know, coming off the back of third wave feminism, is like, that's part of what's really tricky to unpack, is sometimes it's not a conscious bias, it's like a larger structuring principle that is producing a particular systematic bias. So yes, you're not wrong, it's just no one sat down and said we're banning women, it's just it wouldn't have been possible for them to race given the larger social structures.
That explanation probably applies to the Navy too, because there's no women on the sub, and like when Moira visits, like it's like a huge to do because women don't go on the boat.
I mean, that is like women aren't allowed on. Like that's actually, that one actually is just full sexism. Where they're like, yeah, women are banned. Yeah, from the military for a long time.
everyone knows you don't allow women on ships. They're bad luck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Fun stuff to end on. Yeah. So we're gonna next time read the end of the book. So chapter 8 through the end of the book. What I would say is, given everything that we've read so far, it's going to be probably a bit of an emotional read. Um, I yeah, I really like this book. It's been a really interesting one to try and talk through because of so much of the gender stuff that we've been discussing, and like how difficult some of that is to unpack from like to some of what James been saying, like the endemic qualities of Shute being a guy in history writing this in the 50s. Yeah, I think it's a fascinating, piece of history, and yeah, I'm very interested to see where we land on it because I don't remember exactly how it ends. So we'll see.
I've got a weird shout out before we totally move away from the Formula One stuff. I stumbled, I don't know how, on this channel, YouTube, called Actually Ven, actually VEN, and he mainly does shorts, but it's all about Formula One and the ways that the engineers have figured out how to quote unquote cheat, but still legally follow the rule book. And then they have to figure out, oh, they are like they're micro shooting gasoline in between the fractions of a second when the gasoline is measured, so that way they can make their car go faster, but they're still legally following the rule book. And so then they have to change the rule for the next season, but they already won this season, so they'll figure out a different way to quote unquote cheat next season. Absolutely brilliant explanations of like the engineering that these guys are doing. And like I wish that they could have a like non-rule, no regulations kind of race, because the stuff that they do, what he's talking about here, like I'm fascinated by the engineering that is put into this, but they're being hamstrung. Like I keep thinking, like, what could they build if there were no rules and they have this amount of money to put into stuff,
Well, this is an ongoing.
You want pod racing.
Yeah, you want pod racing.
Yeah. Well, that didn't click, but yes.
Yeah. This is an ongoing debate in F1 about. I mean, here's the thing. There are two ways of looking at it. The correct perspective is that the regulations are the sport, right? Finding ways to work around them, get behind them, cheat them, sleight of hand them, that is the sport. If you, as a team of engineers, if you can do those things and get away with it, that's the sport. There's a kind of camp of people that say, oh, F1 now, it's too artificial. We need to go back to real racing. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's always been artificial. It's a fucking car. Like, there's a deep, frustrating pocket of the fandom who says, and I know this is not how you meet it, JM, but they say stuff like that in a way that like makes you go, oh, you probably voted for Trump, huh? There's a real like Venn diagram there of type of guy. But yeah, like the way that F1 works as a sport is they have a series of regulations that dictate how your cars can be built and certain things they have to have. Some of those are safety standards, which are lobbied for by the drivers' union. They negotiate with the FIA, who's the governing body for particular. So like every car has to have a halo, for example, which is the thing that protects the driver in the event of a roll. Every car has to have it's basically a baseboard that has to have a certain thickness to it, so that if the car like goes on a bump, the driver is protected. There's all these different rules. And then, as you say, with the engines, where it's like, oh, you can only have this amount of petrol in your engine. You can only have this, these types of turbos, these types of components. And there's all this politics that goes into, who produces those parts and, all types of stuff that make the sport so fascinating. And it really is just a big ongoing drama. And in the last instance, the regulations are the sport, and without them, like they're just inseparable. It's a fascinating, like, once you get used to it, and you get used to the fact that the regulations it's part of the drama is overcoming them. Fucking rules, man. It's so good. And then you get like you get drivers who, the previous era was very much what you're kind of talking about, JM, of like the previous era was very much this is a machine that you are like it's like the analogy I've used before with Pat is like the previous era was like you wanted to be a World War I like Spitfire pilot, where it's like there's very little digital stuff going on. It's all about just like becoming one with the machine and throwing it around the track and just like fucking holding on for dear life. And if you're really good at that, you'll come out on top. That's why Max Verstappen was so successful for so long, because he's that type of guy. He's like a meld with the machine type of guy. The new era is a lot more like a video game, in the sense that like you have this pool of resources that you can choose to deploy at certain times and have benefits and trade-offs, and the ability to manage those resources while driving the car is a lot closer to like a World War II fighter pilot, where there's a lot of digital stuff going on, and it's about balancing the deployment and the not deployment of those different resources, and kind of leveraging these pools of resources at the right time, and strategically doing that in opposition to the other drivers and stuff like that. It's a very, very different type of racing. So I reckon you would have been a big fan of the previous era, because that was a lot of like, you're kind of just praying that this fucking car beneath you doesn't explode and fly off the track. That was definitely the previous era. Anyway, this has been F1 Talk. All right, here, I'll do this.
That's what you secretly want to do, is start an F1 podcast.
Oh God, because that would be the rest of my life. I will shout out an F1 podcast though. If you are interested in F1, Shift F1 is the premier F1 podcast made by people that aren't complete like assholes about the sport. Like they're actual, thoughtful, introspective guys. Highly recommend Shift F1. Yeah. Cool. Anything else? Should we wrap up?
Nope. Nothing from me.
Nope, but good. Curious to see where it goes. If you'd like to support us, you can head to patreon.com/zeroindent. Supporting us at the $5 tier unlocks the bonus episodes of this show, where we watch and talk about supplementary materials. The next thing going up on that feed will be us talking about the film adaptation of this very book. Our previous episode was on the Road film adaptation. Free Patreon subscribers gain access to the Zero Indent Patreon chat, where you can send us questions and ideas for future episodes directly, or you can just DM me on Patreon or Blue Sky. Any support you can give us helps us keep making thoughtful, independent media criticism, an important practice to preserve in an age where context is defined by algorithms. We appreciate all of our Patreon subscribers who help us continue to make the shows and articles that shape Zero Indent. As always, it's just the end of the show. It's not the end of the world. Yet. Zero Indent is an independent publication dedicated to studying works of genre fiction, brought to you by our subscribers. Head to patreon.com/zeroindent to learn more and consider supporting us. Our theme song is The Swan by Alon Peretz. Our podcast cover art is by Crystal Tay. Everything else is written, directed, and edited by me, DC McNeil. You can find our merch and books at underink.press, and everything we do at zeroindent.com. I figured out what was wrong with my clap technique, because you guys don't have to do the edit for these, so you don't see us failing to clap every week.
The hands weren't meeting. That's pretty much the only way to fail the clap.
Well, no, because I'm saying this like I've been watching game tape. But because what I was doing is I was trying to clap around the microphone. What I've discovered is the correct technique is to back off from the microphone so that I have room, because I was afraid of hitting the mic. Is what was happening. So that's just the panopticon of my clap situation that I'm dealing with. Oh, true. That feels really. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. What am I doing? A jumping jack all of a sudden?
Yeah. You want a bit of flash.
Yeah, hang on. I'm just gonna close this door because someone just started mowing.
I'm looking at your picture, JM, of like your room, and the Batman on the top left. The Batman is that a man bat on the roof?
Yeah. Yep. Classic from the
animated
90s cartoon.
Yeah. I fuck with man bat.
What's his deal? He's like a guy. He's like a professor or whatever, and it goes wrong.
feel like that could be applied to a lot of them.
I was about to say that's like all of the villains in at least in that show. They did a great job of painting them all really realistically. Well,
Yeah. Well, yeah. I know what you mean.
You know what I'm
I know
trying
what
to
you
say.
mean. Yeah. But I think that's one of the risks of living in Gotham, though, is like you could never get too into any one subject because you'd risk that becoming your like villain theme. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't be this into literature. Like I'd become like the book meister or some shit. You know what I mean?
You'd become the scribbler.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you'd have to sort of diversify your interests, or risk becoming a villain themed after it.
That seems like a really fun like meta story to write, where you realize that all of these villains are becoming villains because they're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they have a hobby that they love, and then they get pissed off at Batman. So you're like, I could become a supervillain. I'm going to take my notebook and my pen, and I'm going to go start scribbling stuff, and I'll fall into a thing of acid, and then I'll become a supervillain.
I think that's what happens with Calendar Man, except he doesn't get superpowers. He's just a normal guy who's a bit annoying. And he's like, this comic's great. And then you learn like later on, and I know they eventually retconned it because it's comics, but like that the reason that all these villains kept happening in Gotham is that there was a giant demon bat beneath the city. Anyway, comics, huh? You're looking at me like you don't believe me. It's real.
Well, no, it was that look was. I was angry at the writers of these things because they have to keep going crazier and crazier. Even going back through some of the old stuff in the MCU, not the MCU, but in the Marvel universe of the comics, and reading stuff from like 20, 30 years ago when they like went out into space and then met the entity that created the universe and all of this stuff, and I'm like, this Superman's supposed to be lifting cars. What are y'all doing?
Yeah,
I like that. This is all these tropes are like stuffed into Invincible. It's like that show just takes every one of those things to like its logical conclusion.
it's so good.
That show's great.
Yeah, it does. It's. I think it's reached. Are you up to date?
I'm behind on one episode, I think.
Behind on one episode. Okay, so you're roughly at the... Okay, so this is the point in the comics as well, where it starts to trip over its own feet a little. Because it has this problem of, like, how do you solve this whole Viltrumite thing with Viltrumites? And it starts to trip over its feet a bit, because it's, like, it's material that no other... Where everything else is essentially lifted and then, like, deployed to its max, which is kind of Kirkman's specialty. It's the first time he has to, like, write an idea from scratch and go, wait... What do I do with this? And I can feel the show getting there. I'm so curious how they try and solve it.
Is the comic finished? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's worth reading. You can get the big omnibus. It's fucking great.
I'd say it's more worth it than the show. Like, I haven't seen the season 2, but season 1, like, as good as it was, I was like, they're missing, like, all of the eyeballs hanging out of people's faces. Like, it had to be way more rated R than they made it, and then they cut out a bunch of stuff just because they had to.
I don't think it was because they had to. I think it was budget. They are running that show on
that's
like
still
a
because
razor's edge of budget.
That's still because for whatever reason they had to. They couldn't. The show would have had to have been like 3 times as long, right, to include all of the material.
That's true.
But yeah, I adore it. I was reading it through one of my friends who has it, and I still haven't. I'm only like halfway through the series because I don't have his stuff anymore, and it's like buying the whole thing. Even if you buy the compendium, it's still wicked expensive.
Yeah. So you can read it online.
The animation is pretty rough in the new season. There's a lot of sliding PNGs. But,
hey man,
it's all right.
Sometimes you got to finish your show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, I understand.
Season 8 of The Walking Dead. Brother, there was no money left, and they just went, fuck, we got to shoot a TV show, though. They went, hey, Robert Kirkman, is your wife free? Can she come and do the hair and makeup, please? Because we got no one else.
we have one 3D printer.
Yeah.
Use it sparingly, please.
All right.
So speaking of finishing a show, today we are wrapping up.
I know. Listen. I'm avoiding talking about it because it's a tough one. All right.
But it's got like car races and stuff. Like this was a fun read.
Oh yeah, he said coping. Okay. 3, 2.